state is a fiercely competitive and ruthless society. Misery and triumph.
And now, After Hours with Rixx Javix.
Welcome to After Hours with Rixx Javix. I'm your host, Rixx Javix, coming to you from the darkest reaches of low-security space, live from the Stay Frosty Lounge. Grab a cold drink, light a cigar, and let's talk.
Thank you. Nice to be here. I'm relaxing here with a cocktail. I'm Dunk Dinkle with Brave Newbies. I've been with Brave Newbies since the 5th day of existence. So I've been through all the ups and downs and downs and downs and ups. So
yeah, you're a first weeker, huh? I mean, you were there from the very beginning. So, but you said you were having a cocktail though. So are you really doing that? You really having a cocktail?
Yes.
Yeah, in real life.
Yes, I like a good cocktail in real life. So,
awesome. So share with us what it is.
It's just some Sazerac rye on the rocks with a few drops of mole bitters.
Ooh, nice.
That my friend Norman in Brave turned me on to those.
Oh yeah, nice. So it's kind of like a Moscow Mule a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah, I don't have the copper mugs.
All right, those are nice. All right, so you just said it a minute ago that you were doing some jump freightering. Is that? I mean that. So that right before you got on, you just jumped a freighter. Is that correct? Or
yeah, well, in current news,
right.
Brave Collective is moving its base of operations out of Cloudering, all the way down back to Ketch, one of our ancestral homelands. And so, when you're a player who's been playing for a long time, like me, and you have capitals and lots of ships, it's quite a thing to move across the universe. So it's taken me about a week to reconsolidate in HiSec and sell off a bunch of stuff, move it across HiSec safely, and then today I was jump freightering in a bunch of my stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to restart industry and restart a bunch of stuff in ETAC.
Such a pain in the butt to to move across the universe. I know even just me. I don't have a lot of assets because I'm a pirate, but when you live in a place for a long time, we were in Ishimilkin for about 2.5 years, so I think I had accumulated about 200 spaceships and all the stuff, the loot and everything else that goes with it. So I haven't even moved most of that. Most of that's still there, so it's a pain moving.
Yeah, that's the thing with nullsec is eventually whatever you have, if you can't just leave it there, it'll probably get stuck forever somewhere. So I had been doing a pretty good job of keeping my my load light, but after you've been playing a while, you can fly a lot of special ships, and so you have the just-in-case Balgorn or the just-in-case, 2 dreads and 2 force auxiliaries, and so you just build up a lot of stuff to keep all that supported. And we had moved from Fade into Cloudering as part of this 2B coalition that kind of fell apart.
Oh, right.
And
that's right. Yeah.
So I was gathering up all the deals in Fade and in Saranin nearby and bringing them into Cloudring to help us get set up. And then when everything went down there, when it was time to move, I hadn't sold off all that excess stuff. So I had made it tough on myself by bulking up just before we moved yet again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, I think I still have things like down to Fifth Abyss and some places in Null that I will probably never be able to get to. So, but I can't just trash them. There's something in me that won't just let it go, So I always got my fingers crossed that someday I'll be able to, get into that station and save that, whatever it is, thing that's stuck there,
Yeah, I tend to leave all over the place Sino ships and interceptors. That stuff I don't move. I just leave it there. I never know when you might need it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
But when I finally had enough ISK and skill points to start flying jump freighters, it was the best investment I ever made in EVE, because you never feel like you're going to get stranded. You can at least bring, a load or two out, and the world doesn't end if everything getting trapped. So it gives you much greater peace of mind for only about 8 billion ISK.
Right. Yeah. No, it's that's not a bad idea. I've been thinking about doing that myself too. I might break down and finally buy one, but I don't know. I just I don't know. I'm not sure. It's one of those decisions. It's like
well, the biggest thing that people don't really think about with the Jump Freighter is it's not just the money to buy it and the ISK to train into. It's you're basically at that point. At some point you're going to need a whole nother account just of Sino alts,
right?
Because you're going to need those Sino alts in position. You're going to have to train them up so they can probably fly interceptors to get from place to place without being stopped. It's a commitment that basically a whole nother account, but you do get peace of mind. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, especially if you want to be the master of your own destiny, right, and not have to rely on core mates or other people to do your Sinoing or your alts for you.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you start to get things that are valuable enough that the collateral on them, or trusting a collection of 750 research blueprints, you don't. No matter how much you trust somebody, you don't trust anybody,
right?
And so you want to take care of those things on your own,
right? Yeah, that's always the thought in the back of your head whenever I take a jump. What am I jumping into? Because you never know. It is Eve after all. No matter how well I know the people. Every time I jump something, I always think that, what am I jumping into? So, yeah.
Yeah. And then just, once you start flying capitals, even a poor person's fit of a capital ship is usually around 1 billion ISK in just the modules you're going to put on it.
Oh, sure.
And then if you start blinging it a little bit, so then suddenly for each capital you have, you're basically, 1 billion or 2 of modules in that, and then moving them around again, you start running into collateral and who's going to take this stuff and all that. So
yeah, sure. No, my alt, the only alt I have who generally does my moving for me is she has a carrier. So that's 1.5 billion or 2 billion. All right, so tell me, I'm always curious about where people get their names. So where's Dunk Dinkle come from? Is there any meaning behind that at all? Or?
Well, it goes back to World of Warcraft days. So I started playing MMORPGs back in the early days of Ultima Online.
Right, I remember.
Which is really
Ultima,
a progenitor to Eve, where in that game, if you got killed, they looted you and you started over naked in town. So I played that. And the character name in that was Glendor, and I had lots of good fun times, and then moved through various fantasy stuff. But when I started World of Warcraft, I wanted a new name on the day one, and World of Warcraft has like a random name generator.
Right.
So I just pushed the button, and Dunk came up.
Nice.
And so I said, okay, that's my new name. And so in World of Warcraft, I was Dunk, and then played that for a year or two, and then when I started in with Eve Online, I was like, I'll use Dunk, and then I think it asked you for a last name or and so I was like, what should this be? And I just on a whim just put Dinkle. So
it goes together.
That's
really
how
well.
Dunk.
Yeah.
That's how Dunk Dinkle came into being, and now all my alts are slight variations of that.
Right, that's funny. It does go together. It's not bad. I always think. I'm so glad that I took a moment to think about it before I did it, and didn't get stuck with some, really bad name. I'm sure you see them in local. There are some really bad ones, and some pretty funny ones too. But to be stuck with something like that for 8, who knew? Because I had no idea at the time that I was going to end up playing this game for 8 years.
To me, it just doesn't matter what it is, as long as you can pronounce it. Sometimes I look at people's names and I just don't even know how to say it. And for them, every time someone's mispronouncing their name when they talk to them.
Yeah, it's got to be horrible, especially in fleets too. I mean, as an FC or whatever, when you're trying to get actions going, and it's like, that guy. It's always getting shortened.
Exactly.
Yeah. So did you have any idea when you started playing Eve, or how'd that happen? How'd you get started in the game?
Well, I had read about Eve for quite a while.
Okay.
it just seemed so impenetrable at first, and then I just one time just logged in and tried it, and it was, I'm going to mine, and the idea of nullsec seems so impossible, and these corporations I would read up on the old Chaod forums. I would read these stories of these big wars, and it seemed just so unattainable. And I decided I needed a corp, and I joined this corp called Moose and Squirrel that was run by a husband and wife that played together.
Right.
And we were high sec Care Bears and ran level 4 missions. That's when I first started doing Logi. They needed someone to keep everybody repped up. And so we did that for a while. And then in real life, there was an affair, there was a divorce, there was some kind of craziness happened, and then the corp shut down. And then I did the first version of Faction Warfare when it first was released. Joined on the Caldari side, and it was part of that first push that the Caldari took all the Galente systems, and we got a medal for it. And
yeah, I remember that.
It was fun times. Very different. There, right now people make so much ISK off of a Faction Warfare, but at the time the system was very different. It wasn't about making ISK. But that's when I learned the basics of fleet combat, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And even then, it was not nullsec. It was low-sec with all its rules, and again, nullsec seemed just impossible.
Even then, you thought that,
I mean, I think when we would go into nullsec to like make a shortcut or do something like this, I was just, I was like, I had the shakes over like, what if we get trapped in a bubble and with this and that? It just seems such like a huge leap. And then I just kind of stopped playing for a little while and took a break. And then it was the Battle of Asakai. It hit like the gaming news, and I was reading about it and looking on Reddit, and that's when I got hooked up with Brave Newbies. I saw the post that Matthias Otero made about I'm making this new group.
Right. And
then I got back into EVE, and that was 4 years ago, and I've been kind of hooked ever since.
Wow, has it been that long already? Good grief. It seems like just yesterday I remember all of that stuff, just happening and hearing about it. And I remember, who was it? As Porkbutt and somebody else had contacted me. It was probably right around that time or right before that. And I probably did 20 or 30 different iterations of a Alliance logo for Brave Newbies or Brave Collective, I guess, or whatever the Alliance ended up being called the first time. Is it still the same, or is it?
Yeah, it's still the same. It's still Brave Newbies was the first corp, and then we formed an Alliance, Brave Collective.
Right.
I think when we didn't have a common logo, and there was a lot of debate over the logo for the Alliance. One of our tenets is stay classy, and then there was people that were like, why is this proposed logo like this boy? And we finally ended up with something that doesn't, is just this kind of star pattern. Yeah. That is, it has no human connotation to it.
Right, and it has no real inherent meaning, which is always an interesting way to go, I think, and a totally valid, because you're giving it meaning, right?
Yeah, it kind of had the first logo we had was kind of this bee-looking thing that looked like the moving blue dots,
right.
And then the Brave Collective used that same color blue and the kind of motion of the dots and made the X. So one of our former colleagues who ran Exploration Frontier, French Corp, he's the one who came up with the design. And it just kind of has stuck.
Yeah, I like it. I do. It turned out really good. It was a completely different direction than I was led down, but, that's fine. I've designed enough Alliance logos, so it's not a big deal. But it's a very distinctive. I like it. It's probably the best Alliance logo that I didn't do.
The only thing I regret is we don't really have a animal or anthropomorph. I don't know, anthropomorph. I don't even can't say the word right, but we don't have like an animal or idea or a iconic thing that represents us. Like
the Test
Goons
dinosaur,
have the bee.
Yeah.
Test has the dinosaur.
Right.
PL has the virus. things like that. And somehow I wish that Brave had something that we could riff on a little bit more.
Yeah, that's true. It's always challenging for propaganda and stuff. Those guys got such easy. It's like a shortcut for them, right?
Right, and again, with all those symbols, it wasn't like a planned thing. They happened kind of by like someone started making it and people liked it and it became a thing.
Right.
And for us to force it into Brave, it just probably wouldn't work. We could say, all right, our symbol's going to be, a giraffe, and then everyone would be like, I don't want to fucking be a giraffe, and then, it would die.
Yep. It's like, yeah, exactly. It doesn't happen naturally. It's sort of, it's hard to force things like that on people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So you think you're a lifer as far as Brave Newbies goes?
Every time we have a big downturn, I get approached by people who are like, hey, if you want to come over here, we'll vouch you in, that kind of thing. Right. But look, for now, I'm having a lot of fun. There were some pretty dark days after we got kicked out of Fountain and we were in low sec, and we were just kind of wandering a bit aimlessly. Nancy Crow, who had been our CEO at the time, was taking a new job, was moving, was kind of getting very AFK just due to real life. And, I didn't know if we were going to survive. And that's the time I was, I think, the closest to saying, maybe it's time to go somewhere else and this has run its course. But
right.
A bunch of the young kind of new FCs really got their start in faction warfare and running it that way, and kind of revitalized the corps, started to rebuild it. And then eventually when Kigali took over, moving us to Aquarius ended up being a really great thing.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm glad you guys made it. We came down and fought a lot when you guys were in LoSec, and it was always a lot of fun. But, I was very concerned because I think, I don't know. I mean, I think personally that the game's better with groups like that in it, like you guys and others too, of course. But, I'm not an anti of anything. I think, there's a lot of room for a lot of different groups in EVE, and I don't like to see institutions crumble as much as I do, just because it drives a lot of content for everybody. And even though our paths don't really cross all that often, we still bump into Brave every once in a while, and it's always good. And to kind of know what you're going to get into, it's like for us, like EVE University or Brave or Test or whoever, it's kind of nice to see those institutions thrive and flourish, to varying degrees, of course, whichever side you happen to be on at the time. But it's always kind of a sad day when they fall apart and disappear.
Well, I mean, EVE is a very unique game. It does have some attributes that are not as helpful to long-term survival. There is this kind of pile-on mentality that goes along with the fail scades that happen within alliances and corps, where when when a group seems like they're in trouble, yes, you'll see this kind of a herd mentality to like, let's pile on them in social media, in the game, whatever. And that's just EVE. It's rough. It's tough. But when that happens, you see people just get overwhelmed by, well, now the whole universe turns against them. And no matter how big you are, it can happen, like it happened to Goons. It's happened to lots of different people, this pile-on mentality. And there's nothing really to be done about it. It's just, a difficult part of EVE you have to really have some core values, some core thing you're sticking together for, or it's easy to just give up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's a spiral that sometimes can sweep you aside without you even, I mean, I've seen it happen to myself. We're a couple of different alliances and corporations that I was involved with back in the NullSec days, just disappear overnight, and because of external pressures, because of internal pressures, because of, a great example is, we invaded Catch once, and we were doing really well. This was a CO2. I was in a corporation. It was in a circle of two, and we invaded and everything was going great, and then we bumped up against. Gosh, who was that back then? AAA and a few others who were aligned with them. And then boom, everybody just went home, and a bunch of AFKs, and and we got pushed out of there and lost the entire thing. And it was the quickest, it can happen really fast, Yeah. I always thought they were going to die, but they didn't. So, but yeah, when you're a part of
Well,
that,
it's always very easy to not log in, right? It's easy to say, we're kind of getting fucked over in Eve. I'm just going to play Battlefield, or I'm going to play Overwatch, or I'm going to play this, that. There's a million things to do, and if you're just feeling dejected about your role in Eve, it's just don't log in tonight. Everything will be fine. You catch up later, and then one day becomes 2 days, and then 3 days, and soon a week goes by, and then that happens a lot, and then suddenly the corp just can't field people, and it all cascades.
Well, yeah, you know what it is. I mean, you take a day or two off, and I'm on a streak right now where I haven't logged in about 3 weeks because I took a new job in January, and that's going really well, but I've also been working evenings and weekends too on some freelance stuff. But it after 3 weeks or after a few days, it takes a little bit more energy when you're logging in every day. It's like habit, right? And then you break that habit, and then the longer that break goes on, the more energy it takes to decide to do it again. So, the longer you're out, the harder it is to come back, because then you've got to, it's all the things you think about. It's like, wow, I've been out for so long, and then I've got to explain to everybody where I've been, and at least that's a little easier now, even though I'm out of the game for a little bit, and I'm hoping to get back in this week. But even though I've been out for a couple of weeks, you still have. I mean, I'm sure Brave has a forum and Slack channels and things like that. But so do we. So I don't. It's not like the old days when I was out of Eve. I was out of Eve, right? There wasn't a way to check your. You couldn't even check your email without logging in back in the day. But now at least you can stay. You can Eve. You can you can use your Eve mail. You can stay up to date with Slack channels and Discord or whatever it is you're using, and so you don't feel removed, completely. So at least that helps, I guess.
Yeah, the Slack thing's kind of interesting. I mean, I had it for work and talking for other purposes. So when people started moving into Slack to be communication, it's very different than a forum or a Jabber, things like that. So I think Slack has made it easier to keep up what's going on and not lose track of the conversation if you want to slide back in time.
Right. Yeah, I like it for that. I think it's pretty cool. I think that all the different ways of communicating are all good, because essentially most problems come from a lack of communication. So now we have so many ways of staying in touch, so you don't feel, even though you're not able to log in, as regularly as you used to maybe. But I mean, it's a little different, I guess, for nullsec, because for me, I don't have anything I have to do. I log in basically for the fun of it. So, I know when, I'm sure you have responsibilities that you need to attend to, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, when you start having nullsec and you're building, putting up citadels to do industry and reprocessing and coordinating capitals, and I've been doing industrial stuff where I make capital modules and researching blueprints. You have this reason to keep coming back in and okay, what was I researching and what did I have to buy in Jita? And there's this big complicated set of spreadsheets you start to get into. And if you take too big a break from that, it gets really hard to where was I? Why was I doing this?
Right. Yeah, you gotta relearn a little bit when you come back.
Yeah, just catching up on things.
I know the hardest part for me when I take breaks is coming back and remembering all the little details. I always say, when I first get back, it feels like you're really rusty, and it's because it's not so much the game that you've forgotten. It's all the little stuff, the little things, and it takes a little while playing to get back into that again and get your head back around it, I guess, because Eve is rather complicated. In a way. Yeah,
if I spend a week where I'm just basically doing, kind of logistical stuff and, logging into a capital, not flying a lot of fleet combat, that kind of stuff, and then the meta starts to change, some new technique shows up, when they first put the boosh, what do they call them, micro jump, whatever.
Oh, yeah, the micro jump drives. Yeah.
Right. So then when they, the first time I got double booshed off of a station, I was like, what the fuck just happened? And everyone's like, oh, you got double booshed. I'm like, what are you talking about? How did I move twice? How they were 100 away, and then they jumped in on me and jumped again. And I was so convinced it was an exploit, and it was just. And now, like the snatch gangs that do this kind of thing, are pretty commonplace. But at the time, they were like, "What's been going on for a couple of weeks? Where have you been?" And I had just been out of the loop, and I think it cost me a scimitar for that.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. We just had guys on our Slack channel. We're just talking about a guy they did that to the other day, and he must have been away for a while too, because he was saying the same thing in local. Like, what just happened? He got double booshed off of one of the stations and killed. I think it was a Garmer or the Orthrus that he lost. He was kind of upset about it, but he must have been away for a while too. So it's Eve, man. It's a tough game to come back to sometimes. It's a little bit, it's complicated, like you were saying. I mean, when you're in it, I don't think it's so bad. I mean, personally, I don't think it's that complicated, but I try to see it from from the outside view. It's like you said, when you first heard of it, it seemed very impenetrable. And I think there's a little bit of that, perception out there in the real world, that Eve is this dark and complex and deep place, which it frankly is, but it's also not in so many ways. It's relatively straightforward, really, but the depth is there for you to expand on and learn. But I don't know. I don't think it's that bad.
Well, it's an interesting game because look, you can just log in every night and say, I'm just going to fly Atrons and frigates and go tackle stuff, and it costs me basically nothing, and I can just do that, and I don't have to worry about another whole nother thing in the game. Just join a standing fleet or a roam, and just do that every night and not have any stress over things. It's when you start getting into the deeper aspects of the game where you're, is the price of contaminated Lorentz fluid ever going to go down so I can build these rigs, and what's the best, like, whatever rabbit hole you go down, like suddenly it can suck you in to where, you're at work building spreadsheets instead of doing your work.
Yeah, no, and it doesn't matter what it is. Anything you pick, there's a rabbit hole that you can go down, and you can really get pretty far down in that rabbit hole, and if you want to, right? You were saying a minute ago, you have spreadsheets for industry and stuff, but you can have them for anything. I know people who look at those things quite religiously about PvP content and the way things stack up and what modules to use and what the oh my goodness, the resist profiles, and we talk about this stuff all at no end to an nth degree sometimes, and when it goes right down to I'm not basically pound the snot out of each other,
Yeah, I'm not one in for the super fitting talk, I mean, people get mad sometimes where, like, the fourth high slot on my scimitar, I'll say, well, I'm putting a festival launcher here instead of some faction small repper or whatever the hell they want me to put,
Right.
But there's people who really love the fitting talk and the damage and the resistance and total min-maxing it, and that's not what appeals to me in the game.
Yeah, so what is it then? What is it that appeals to you in the game? What do you enjoy doing the most?
I mean, I like kind of all the things. I mean, like I said, I've been doing some industry lately. I do like the capital gameplay. That's kind of fun. I do Logi is the thing I really do the most of in fleets.
Right.
And there is something pretty special when you land on grid in your force auxiliary and you have no guns, you have no real offense, and you are the one trying to keep an entire fleet alive. The pressure is on, and you're either the hero or the goat. And I think to me that's a very fun aspect of the game for me.
Right. Hey, well, let me ask you, because you're probably the first person I've ever talked to who actually flies those things. Because we live in low sec, so we don't really use force auxiliary. So I've not talked. So how are they as far as flying them goes?
They're a lot of fun. I mean, I think they met the goal that the dev team had for capitals to kind of make the roles a little bit more separated. I mean, carriers used to be this multi-purpose tool, and when you put them in like a slow cat setup, it was unstoppable. And now you go into a capital fight, unless it's a complete overmatch or someone escalates to supers, everybody's going to get bloodied. You jump in dreads, they jump in dreads, everybody goes into siege, and things are going to die. And then if you bring in carriers, the Force Ox can try and keep the carriers up, but at some point you won't be able to, if you don't have enough fat, like they'll cut through those. So I think they have achieved it where it's not like where the capital fights used to be, where it's completely lopsided. But super capital still, if you're fighting an opponent who can escalate and you can't, you're just in a bad way.
Right. You're going to get outweighed. The scales are going to tip, if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing that was it was a big part of being a triage carrier pilot was repping structures. When the way Sovereignty and the stations, you did in Tosis, and so there was a lot of times we would spend repping structures, which was very painful. Yes. And at the time, we're like, can we do something a little bit better than that? And so then they've taken that away, but you do, as strange as it sounds, kind of feel for the Entosis wanding stuff is good in general, but there are things where you're like, well, can't we rep these shields? Or like, it does feel weird for an older player to not be able to help its structure that's getting killed.
Yeah,
it used to be we would fight like a DPS versus reps kind of race.
Right.
Can they do more DPS than we can rep a structure kind of thing?
Right.
And that's kind of gone. Now it's this kind of Entosis, and now with Citadels, like the repair cycle, all that kind of stuff, which is just a different kind of gameplay, but it does feel weird that there isn't really a role for Force Auxiliary in those gameplay anymore the way there used to be. So if there was some way they could add something back in where Force Ox showing up for structure timers had a better role, that'd be neat.
I get what you mean. Yeah, because it's kind of. I mean, I don't play that, but so it's not top of mind for me. But it makes sense when you think about it, because we have taken down structures many times, but you're playing. It's basically an attack wait, defend wait, kind of a battle. Whereas before it was more of a, I can see this. The POS shield or whatever, or the POS has this amount of damage to it, and if I show up in a repping ship, I can rep it, right? Even if I can't get it all the way, I can at least do something. But that's kind of been taken away a little bit.
Yeah, well, you used to have a fight over a POS, let's say, and then so you'd bring in some carriers and throw them into triage. The enemy fleet shows up, and the carriers are like, I just have to rep, and I'm doing everything I can to rep, and then your defensive fleet is trying to keep the offensive fleet busy, right, and keep them occupied. And so there's this kind of race situation going on. And it's just different now with Entosis. It's not, I won't say it's bad. It's just different. And the role of being a Force Ox pilot in that is now they prefer like, just get in your Scimitar, your Neros, your Guardian, whatever, and go help the main fleet. Right, which is good and all, but I just wish there were more opportunities to be Force Ox other than I'm going in to keep a super capital or a carrier repped, which is what the role is now.
No, it makes sense. It would be nice if there was, some benefit to it outside of just combat, I guess, to help the structure or or something about it, I guess. Huh. I hadn't considered that before. Well, it's a very good point.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's a big priority. I mean, there's so many other things they're working on in the game that are going to be kind of cool, and the drilling platform stuff, the whole how they want to replace the POSs is going to be interesting to see. Hopefully, it's FanFest. We're going to hear a little bit more. Are you going to be able to go to FanFest this year?
Yeah, we are. My wife and I are both going. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
we'll have some drinks together there.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, you're going too, right? Yep. So
yeah, I went last year, and my wife, she had a good time going to Iceland. So this year she insisted that we go back again. So what more can you ask for when Mrs. Dinkle is like, "Yep, we're going to Iceland again." So that'll be a lot of fun. Great. And Then hopefully next October, it'll be my 5th E-Vegas, and in theory I get one of the magical Concord Marshall battleships they're going to be giving away if you go to FanFest and E-Vegas. So
wow,
maybe I'll be rich and can afford a Titan. Who knows? Oh,
wow. Yeah. See, that's something I got to get in. I think maybe it's time. I have been thinking about it. Maybe I should skill up for all of Rixx's skills for the last, 100 and, I don't even know now, 165 or so million skill points it's all subcaps. So I don't know. I've been debating whether I should maybe take the plunge into a dreadnought or something just for the fun of it.
Yeah, well, flying a dreadnought is a lot of fun. You kind of like, you get the ping and you're ready to go, and you're sitting in station or your Fortizar or wherever, and then Sino's lit, and you hop in with about a group of your buddies, and it's do or die. Like once you go into siege and start killing things, nobody can help you. You're on your own,
right?
And you kill the fuck out of other people, and other people are killing the fuck out of you, and it's playing for keeps. You're billions on the line, and
that's awesome.
It does. You and I have been playing for a long time. We rarely get the shakes, but when you're flying in a dreads and it's even numbers, you know that half of your team, at the best case, is going to go down, and you might be in that half.
Right.
So it is a lot of fun to be part of a dread bomb, and I highly recommend it. The carrier gameplay is fun, and there's probably a lot of different debates about if they're overpowered or not.
Right.
I don't really fly them, but flying a dread is a lot of fun. And then even if you use those high angle guns on a dread and you can kill the smaller ships, that is tremendous fun, as one-shotting the subcaps when they come around your dread.
Right.
You're probably going to, in the end, lose it, but just to watch things just evaporate from one round is
right.
It does bring a lot of smile on your face. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I forgot about that change, to the dreads, being able to hit small targets like that. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's been around for a long time, but it didn't used to be that way. So that's kind of neat. I'd forgotten about that. So there might be some utility for a dread in low sec that I haven't considered. I might have to give that some thought, because it's not really like, if I show up in one, somebody's going to hot drop it. So I got to think about that too. Because that's, obviously a big problem that we have right now is the sheer amount of Sino bait that's out there. It's kind of crazy. We often run into people dropping carriers on Atron fleets and stuff. It's kind of goofy how desperate people are to fight. They'll drop carriers on just about anything. So there's been some funny examples of that lately, but.
Well, the thing we've been running into, or we're running into when we're up north, was I don't know if you've been reading much about the Rorquals, but the Rorquals in the last change to them became extremely powerful and versatile in many ways. And so I think we had a timer, and then the enemy citadel was defended by 15 Rorquals, which was just it's just a bit silly, and people could get on a big tear and complain and wring their hands and cry over it, but eventually it'll get balanced out. But right now it's just a bit crazy that the most versatile, powerful, and fun to fly capital ship is the Rorqual right now. So
yeah, that's funny. Well, they were complaining about it before, that it didn't have a role and that nobody was flying them, and now it's gone the other way. So that's pretty typical for CCP, right? They've done this before, where they overfix something a little bit, but they'll scale it back, I'm sure. So what are you most excited about to hear about at FanFest? I mean, have you given that some thought about what are you most excited about for the future?
Well, I'm interested in the way that the moon mining is going to change. I'm hoping it doesn't stay right now. If you're in nullsec, a very small portion of your alliance is going to run the moon mining for the most part, and that's where the money's made that funds the alliance. And because of the way POSs work with rights, the roles mean very few people can participate in that in any way.
Yes.
And if you compare it to the way that planetary interaction works, where basically anybody in your group can go set up PI, make materials, put them on the market, contribute, and make money from doing this. It's a very good system. And so I'm just hoping the moon mining goes a little bit toward the PI style, where the members can benefit from the moon mining directly and help generate the products you need to make things.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
again, most of the stuff that people are doing in low sec, unless you're super organized, you mine the goo out and then you haul it to JITA and it's sold in JITA. And some people have reaction, factories in low sec and whatever.
Right.
But
right.
most of the alliances are just hauling the shit out to JITA where the industrialists buy it. Now, if there was a method to use this kind of moon goo stuff the same way PI is, where the individuals you could kind of build locally kind of thing, which you really, it's really hard to do because a lot of the materials for T2 ships all come from moon goo,
Right.
and almost always the moon goo's hauled out and you have to haul in the materials or haul in the ships.
Right.
So that's what I'm looking forward to, is some kind of system like that.
That's pretty cool. I think it's the idea of spreading that out a little bit more and having more people involved in it. It was always, I mean, even back in the day when I haven't been in Null for years, but it was always, a little, sort of the elite, few who were responsible for that. But I think that's a great idea to spread that out and make more people involved, and make it more something that that others can contribute to would be good for everybody.
Yeah, with a group of newbies and new players, keeping ISK rolling in is tough to do. And so the more ways that we can have them put in a little bit of effort to get a little bit of passive return on it would be great. That's what I would love to see. And as someone who builds stuff, I'd love to buy locally and not have to haul everything in from JITA, which seems like a constant thing for me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not I'm not a big fan of JITA. I'm not a big fan of the centralized sort of market thing, but it is what it is. There's nothing that I can do about it. So, but I don't know what I'm most excited about. I think I'm curious because there's really been very little about the roadmap for the last year or so, and I'm curious. I'm hoping that we're going to get a better shot at what is the next thing that we were sort of promised on the roadmap that we haven't heard about in a long time. So I'm hoping that that's going to be a big part of what we get teased, or that we get a little bit more in-depth explanation about what exactly that is. It's been, if you think about it, it's been a while now, 2 years or so, since we started hearing, talk about, player-controlled gates or player-built gates and new space and new exploration things and stuff like that. So we really haven't heard much about that in detail or anything for the last, year and a half, 2 years. So I think that, I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more concrete information about where Eve is going. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the thing is, I don't know where the player gate stuff goes. I mean, I do like the idea of building something that takes a lot of effort. I mean, when people put in a keep star, it's a big deal. Like, people have really put in a lot of effort to do that, and it's a structure, and it's really neat. And the player gates, I could see the same kind of effort being put in, but if you fly around nullsec like I do, most of nullsec is empty. Like, there's pockets where people are doing stuff,
right?
But there's this vast system after system where there'll be like 2 people running missions or doing exploration, and that's it. So by adding more space, I just don't know how that helps the game. I mean, even wormholes is, how many thousands of wormhole systems are there, and most of those are desolate. There's a very high-end few that are very valuable. So I'm not sure adding space what that does for the game, but
that's why
and how it's different than jump bridges are now.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so curious, because it's easy to say things, and then also what choice do we have, because we have no information. So we're all like, well, why would you add more space? We can't fill up the space that we do have. But again, it might not be regular space, right? It might not be because that's all we're thinking is like, oh, it's going to be another region or, something, but maybe it's not quite that. I don't know exactly what it would be, but that's why I'm so freaking curious about what it is. Why are we building gates and where are we going? And what's over there when we get there, Is it just, it's not I think like you, I think it would be a bad idea if it was just another Great Wildlands, right? I mean, there's 50 star systems on this side of, you got to build a gate to get there. I think that would be kind of silly. Because what would be the point? So, I'm hoping there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think they've probably looked at every aspect. At one of the big Eve meets, they said, here's all the things that posses do, and we're going to put structures in to replace each of those things. Right. So I don't know if the player gates are just the replacement of the jump bridges, which right now are anchored to pauses. That could be what they're talking about, but people are expecting some miraculous Jove space kind of craziness, and I just don't know. I mean, I'm not going to freak out one way or the other. It's just it'll be interesting. I think the mining and then the player gates, I think hopefully they'll address those at FanFest, and all the industrialists can start stockpiling materials and getting rich, and I always forget to.
Yeah, I think that more than likely they have an answer for all that, and I'm hoping to hear about it more, and I'm excited about it. I just don't know that it's going to affect my game a whole lot, but I hope it's good. I like where we're going with the structures and with the teardown of the POS system and the new, the mining and the industrial stuff. I'm glad that it's not a play style that I spent a lot of time with, obviously, but it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it and that I'm not happy. I am happy that the industrialist side and those guys who are doing a lot of the great work on there are getting better gameplay. I think everybody deserves the best gameplay that they can get, and I'm glad to see that a lot of that is happening for that side of the game, which is oftentimes overlooked for PvP. For the stuff that a lot of us do on a regular basis, but I'm glad to see the industrialists getting their fair shake of the of dev time. So that's good. They deserve it.
Yeah, it's also cool to see some of these like events like this current what is it, Guardians Gala,
right?
And we've had these things where these they run for a few weeks. There's special skins, and there's little drop boxes. These mining fleets. I've never bumped into the NPC mining fleets, but I love that they're also doing things for the kind of the PvE type of stuff, and
right.
The ability of people who don't want to do nullsec, they don't want to do big fleet combat or a lot of PvP. They keep adding cool things for them to do along the way, and I think this skin stuff and Aurum, I think they're making some good moves to have a system where they can make money but not make it play to win. I mean, you do see some of this skill injector abuse where there's people been playing for 2 months and they have 50 million skill points because they have a credit card.
Right.
But still, they have some of the biggest lost mails, those people as well. But I think the balance has been pretty good so far, keeping PvE interesting, monetizing things, and keeping this kind of core nullsec, huge, great game stuff also going along at the same time. So no easy feat to do that.
No, it's for us as players, it's rather complex and deep and all that. It's got to be even more so for CCP because they have to take into account all of those different aspects. You brought up something that I've forgotten about too, which is something I'm also curious about. Are we going to hear more about? We've had little flashes of, what they've been working on as far as AI for the NPCs, and we've had some teasing about more of that. The NPCs doing more like engaging, traveling, being a more active part of the background and being interactable. And I'm curious to see if we're going to hear a little bit more about that as well too. So, because that kind of excites me in ways because I think that it would be a lot better if Eve was more dynamic in the environment, right? Like you just said, you can travel through nullsec, and there's and it's true in lowsec too. I mean, there's there's systems where there just won't be anybody, and it would be interesting if there was content in those systems, even for just passing through. NPC content that wasn't really about warping to a belt and having people just waiting there for you to show up to fight them. I guess a lot of these missions, these new missions are getting that kind of AI. Because I'm hearing from people that a lot of these are a lot harder than they used to be, as far as the NPCs are concerned.
Yeah, the NPC mining AI evidently is pretty good, and it's a tough fight. So I hope they bring that to other places, because while I do love the NPC dreads and titans that spawn in nullsec, because that's where I get a lot of the materials to build capital modules, is what they drop. But basically, if we see an NPC dread or even an NPC titan appear, you bring like 5 or 6 griffins with the right color jams, and then you've neutralized this capital. Then you bring in a little kitchen sink DPS fleet, and you kill this thing. And I think that would be very interesting is, what if you go to attack an NPC Titan and then it sinos in a similar kind of assist AI, like the way these mining fleets are. It brings in a even more significant defense fleet, and so then you get yourself into a pretty serious fight that you're not just counting on six griffins to keep everything running. You're really in a serious fight. So that would be interesting.
You have anything else you'd like to add to our conversation? I think I'm pretty much good to go on that. Are you?
Well, I will do the traditional shout outs to all of my compadres in Brave Collective, our new friends in our new old friends in Test, our new friends in CO2 and Drone Walkers, and our whole. I won't even pretend I know what we're supposed to call our little coalition down there.
Right.
I won't get in trouble by choosing one, but
that's awesome.
It's been really fun to go someplace. Feel like for the first time in a while we've had some backup. Which, being on your own, even when you're a big group like Brave Collective, having some backup for things really does feel a little bit better and keeps the morale nice and high. So I appreciate all those people.
Yeah, cool. That's a good shout out, and kudos to all you guys, and I hope things work out. For everybody down at Catch. I have really no idea what's going on down there, so I try to keep up with everything, and I do a pretty good job of it. But it's been a month of insanity. For once, at least a good side of insanity this time. So it's just been hard to keep up lately with what's been going on. But I'll say thank you for taking the time to join me tonight on the show, and I really look forward to. I was looking forward to meeting you last year, but we weren't able to make it. But this time, I guess we'll see each other at FedFest. So I'm looking forward to it. And will your wife be with you this time? So. You said your wife is coming?
She will be there. She's very excited to go see Iceland. She's not too excited about drinking with the Eve nerds, as she calls it, but she will be there drinking and having fun.
That's
so
awesome.
It'll be a good time.
Yeah, same here. Hey, the last time we were there, 2 FanFests ago, when my wife didn't play at the time, and going to FanFest is what convinced her to start playing Eve. So that's pretty cool. She enjoyed it as well. So we're both really looking forward to it. So we'll see you. It's only like a little 5 weeks or something. So
yeah, it's coming up pretty quick.
It's
so
very exciting. I'm excited. I wish it was tomorrow, but we'll have to wait. All right, Dunk. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming by and spending the afternoon or the evening with us.
All right, take care. Have a good one.
Fly safe.